Well, you could always
So
do like a for the Twitter audience. You could do a play-by-play, like
yeah.
like
Well, no, I mean,
MMA.
I'm okay. So I'm live right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and I'm still getting things set up here. I want to make sure that the people in the vertical can hear me. So I'm just adding the appropriate uh source to that. So you should not be able to see me, but you should be able to hear me simply because we're adapting. I had to adapt the layout for what we are doing, and so right now I'm here with Allison, and I'm in the Twitter space. Oh, I should add a link to the Twitter space. I should have gotten that too, and I'm gonna drop it in the description of the video so that people can join. That's probably something that I should do. So let me just drop the link, the correct link for the Twitter space, because that's the old link right now. So just give me a mo, and I will do that. But let me know if you guys can hear me and Allison fine. If you are watching this on YouTube, if you're in the Twitter space, you should only be able to hear me, and that's just the unfortunate reality that we have to deal with right now. But potentially Allison could join the Twitter space or whatever
Yeah,
later.
I'm working on that right now.
Yeah, she's working on that right now. So, um, okay. That is not an old photo, actually. That is from just this past, isn't it? I think that was just from this past summer. Like when
What?
we went to
You
the
mean
photo
my
on your,
photo?
the photo on your,
No,
on
that's
the,
yeah, that is from 2019, so it is a bit old.
oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. Well, we don't look that much different. I mean, I don't think so. Okay, everything's fine on YouTube. Okay, so we're good. They can hear me, they can hear you. So anyway, we're just waiting on the guest to join, and then we'll, I guess, chat with them. And those of you guys who are in, again, if you're watching this on Spaces or listening on Spaces, um I'm not like yes, was it yesterday or Friday? Friday we did like a space. It was for Valentine's, and we were in
Mm-hmm.
both places at once, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I
Um,
did. We'll see
yeah,
if it
I
does
think
this
it
time.
did. I think it sounded
Yeah.
fine for what it is. So if you're in spaces, you're just hearing me. But if you really want to get the full context, go to our YouTube channel,
Oh, am I
or on
live now?
Our Rumble channel. Yeah, I've been live. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
live.
So you've been watching me do stuff here.
Well, yeah, you're fiddling. I don't know what
Fiddle,
that
yeah,
is, but
I'm trying to make it so that I can also get into spaces. It's just my like I don't know. It was incredibly cold. Had trouble starting the car. Then we are actually having record cold in Kelvington right now, or in Saskatchewan right now. It's like unbelievable. It's
wow.
supposed to be like -6. It's
Oh no,
-4.
that's right. It is supposed to be crazy cold up there, obviously, but also in the Midwest, Southern Illinois and Tennessee, they're getting hit. We got rain, that's it. A lot of rain, the river is pretty flooded, but no, nothing severe. It's just wet and chilly. So
Yeah.
I am
I'm gonna
grateful for that.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So I am in my personal account
Yes.
now. Okay. Why? Oh, right. The Macs have this thing where you can share a mouse between two. Come on. There we go. But then it gets sort of confusing because the mouse goes all over the place and I can't find it because I'm looking at one
Mm,
screen and it's actually on the other. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
All right. So let me get the spaces. This one, copy, go here. There we go. Now, no, I don't want to boost my account right now. I want to get into here. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to have to mute this. Yeah, it's already muted. And then I'm going to have to actually, I'm just going to stay muted for now.
Uh-huh.
Oh, looks like everybody left.
Oh, that's okay. They'll join. So you're in here now. Let me turn you into a speaker.
Sure, but I'm going to just mute.
All right. Should go back here. Well, yeah, I should manage the participants. Oh, that's okay. They'll join. So you gotta mute yourself or
Yeah,
something
I got
because
it.
I hear my voice. Okay.
Well, I got it.
All right.
All right.
All right. So now, because I want to make sure they can hear you talking for the context. Okay. So I've turned you into a co-host in here, and I don't know if that's something you have to accept, but
oof, my cat is losing her mind. This is too much stress for her.
Okay. Welcome to the show, people. Gabriel Phelan Lucas says, "Don't fiddle with yourself on stream, Allison." Oh,
that's terrible.
Okay, you can't see me, but I'm face palming.
All right, so now we just have to wait to see if Maddie can get into.
Let's see if she can get in here, or if this is going to be a whole thing. So
yeah,
I will enable video if needed, but for now,
yeah, it's just me and you for now.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Waiting. Well, okay. I'll enable video for now. Let me just where is it? And
it uses.
Oh, right. No, my camera's being used by my OBS because I wanted to have it available as a
Up you go.
I wanted to have it as an option. So local cam. Okay, this is working. So I'll just turn it on in for YouTube, so that and leave it at that. So where's local cam at? Where did I put it? Okay, here we go. So there we go. And
oh, there you are.
Yeah.
No, they can't see me.
Oh, well, that's because hold on a second. That's because my this camera's really big. So I'm just gonna move it. I'm gonna move it. This is a temporary setup, okay? Just until we get the guest in here. So I'm gonna leave it like that. Oh shit, my vertical's all wacky. Give me a second. I gotta adjust that. You're getting way too much me. I don't want to be that important. So I will shrink myself in here and tuck it nicely into the space. Okay. Down below. Space between.
Okay, so Natty says her phone crashed, so had to switch to laptop.
Okay, there we go. Let me just move my thing down here. All right, so I'm gonna disappear again. So give me a second.
It'll just be me and my cat.
Yeah.
And possibly JoJo if you have JoJo cam on.
No JoJo. Unfortunately. No JoJo. But let me, because Lindsay's home today. She gets Sundays off so that we can go to church. All right, there you go. So now just see. There we go. Yes, now we're in business. All right. Welcome, Natty. How are you doing? Can you? Oh,
okay.
No.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I can hear you. Okay, good. It's working. All right. So,
just move this way. That's better.
Okay. Well.
All right, real quick before we get started, I want to let everybody know, if you could, I'd like this to reach as many people as possible. So liking the video or sharing it would be great. And if you guys want to, if you have anything to say, you can send us a message by going to feedthebadger.com/just-the-tip, or you can just send a super chat or a Rumble rant. All right. Yep. So that's it for me.
And again, sorry to the X. I guess they won't be able to hear this, but Oh wait, there's nobody really watching through X.
Well,
I guess they all
they might. Well, they come and go. So, but
All right. So
Are
Frank,
you doing a live stream on X?
Yep, it's a live stream on X. We're also streaming through our channel, which is what we
And
usually do,
we're in spaces as well.
which is the complexity that caused all these issues.
Yeah.
No worries. I was on X earlier waiting for you, and then I got distracted, but then also I couldn't really log in. So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I still have a little bit, like about 2 hours, so it should be, if even with the late start, we should be. Ooh, we're getting an echo.
Are we getting an echo? R4 said that because just now it was a little while ago, but I haven't had an echo since then. So
I just heard an echo. So yeah, it seems to have resolved itself. So hopefully it doesn't come back. So what we're planning to do is we'll do like maybe an hour discussion between you and me, and then we will throw it to the X floor and do maybe an hour of that. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Okay. That's
Yeah.
fine with me.
And I guess Brian will moderate, and yeah.
yeah.
So,
Well, I'll try to keep you on topic. How about that?
Sure. Okay, so I guess choose a topic, Natty.
Oh. Well, what I'm doing these days is critiquing gynocentrism theory that you guys generally subscribe to. So we can start with that if you want.
Well, first of all, define gynocentrism theory that you are critiquing.
So I'm using what Peter Wright's writings, that the West is gynocentric, women-centered at the expense of men. And his theory goes all the way back to the medieval period.
Well, that's not very far, but okay. So essentially what your argument is that the West does not benefit women at the expense of men. Or alternatively, that the general attitude is not to benefit women at the expense of men.
The general attitude and benefits, is that different to women centered at the expense of men?
Well,
or is that the same?
Okay, so it's slightly different. You could say that functionally people are not able to benefit women, but still want to. Or you could say they want to and they do. So, so which is it?
Well, my argument is that we don't have an overall gynocentric society.
So
we may have some examples of gynocentrism, but when you add things up and tally them together, as in what...
Okay, just a sec before we get into it, because I still think we haven't defined things. So your problem is that you don't think that so there's two components to this. You don't think that people want to benefit women over men, or you don't think that they are so there can be an attitude, so a desire towards gynocentrism, and for whatever reason, it's not realized. So are you saying that people don't have a desire for gynocentrism as well, or just that they can't create it?
Both.
Okay. All right. So we can start with not wanting a desire or not having a desire to benefit men over women. Correct?
Benefit women over men, you mean?
Yeah. Women over men. Information was conveyed. So we could start with that element, since in order to have a gynocentric society, we sort of have to start with the desire for one. Correct?
Yes. I don't believe that there is a desire for one.
You're wrong. You're 100% wrong. In the scientific literature, the evidence is that the average person does want to benefit women over men. So if there's an instance where harm can be accrued to a woman or a man, they will prefer to see it done to a man. If there's benefit to be given either a woman or a man, they will prefer to see that done to a woman. It even goes to the instances of scientific studies. So if a scientific study shows that men are better than women at something, people will believe that it's false or that the methodology is incorrect. Whereas if it shows the reverse, they're more likely to advocate for that science as being correct. And this is stuff that is in literature. Like, this is what we see in terms of the psychology of men and women and how the individual man and woman wants to benefit men or women. Now, if we look at something like implicit bias, women have an implicit bias for other women. So they have a preference for other women that we do not see with men. Men don't have a preference for other women, don't have a preference for men the way women have a preference for other women. In fact, I think what men's preference is for other women as well. So, I mean, you can say that this is not the case, but you're arguing with a lot of science.
Just saying that I'm arguing with science, you will need to
I will.
give me an example of what one of those studies are.
Okay, the implicit bias study in relation to implicit bias in gender. Let me call up my resources. And also there is a recent study into you're gonna hear a lot of me typing and not speaking if I have to do this.
That's okay.
No, I'm not gonna like get you to do it for every single point. I'm not gonna be pedantic like that. But
that's fine. I mean, we can sit here and in silence while
wait. I can't. I can't. You guys, when you talk at the same time, people can't make out what you're saying. Go ahead, and Allison, while you look that up. Natty, you go ahead and finish your thought.
No, I was just saying I'm not gonna like get her to do every single study that she may be referencing. I'm just saying that saying science says this is not particularly good enough in this conversation at this point. So you're going to need to.
Okay, but here's the thing. You are asserting something that isn't proven. Like, ultimately, we have to look at something to make our assertions. Right? We have to base them on some kind of common ground. If you're going to say, well, science is just, we can't, well, then what do we base it on a common ground? There's no point having a discussion. Like, when you say that gynocentrism, if you want to call it gynocentrism, or preference to benefit women doesn't exist, there is substantial science to indicate that it does. There is implicit bias that women have towards other women. If you ask the average person if they would want to harm a woman versus a man, they prefer to harm a man. If you ask they would prefer to benefit a man, they would prefer to benefit a woman. Like, you're going up against actual evidence. And then, of course, the omega bias, or the omega, I think it was omega bias, which is what I was talking about with the scientific surveys. If you show people science and you just make up like two studies, one that shows men are better at something and one that shows that women are better at something, you show it to the average person, they will guard the one in which men are better at something as with more suspicion. So we don't just prefer to benefit women, to prevent them from harm. We don't just see an implicit bias towards women from women towards each other. We also see a desire to view women more positively than men. And this is all in the literature. And I mean, if you're going to say, well, no, that doesn't exist, that's fine. But that's not a discussion to be had here, Nadi. You need to go into the literature and you need to do a review of it. And you need to state your thesis of why, or your hypothesis of why all of it is wrong. Otherwise,
I've got a hypothesis why this is wrong, but
you got to do it after reviewing the literature.
Allison, let Natty say her piece, because she might not want to talk about it from the perspective of like studies and statistics, because I can understand how there could be some desire to like view those things with suspicion too. So let's hear Natty's case. Outside of that, I guess, or whatever I don't want to put words in your mouth, but let's hear what Natty's side of that. So go ahead, Natty.
Yeah, sure. So like what Brian just said, there's definitely going to be arguments that I could make that could say, well, they're right to view certain studies with suspicion because studies are misrepresented all the time. And the variables and things that they select in a study and then represent it on the internet or in the media. Well, we all know that things get misinterpreted or misrepresented quite often on all sides of actually. It's not just, you know, the liberal left or the mainstream. This also happens from the kind of alternative side, or, you know, right wing, or whatever is deemed to be outside of the status quo. It happens all over the place. So that's the first point I will make about that. The other side of it is this argument you're making that if somebody thinks that it's worse for a woman to be treated a certain way, and that's what's represented in a study, that actually then correlates to proving that the West is gynocentric overall. I could probably argue that point and probably test that point with you. But my position, generally speaking, isn't. I could use some data and studies that you may provide, or stuff that I may have come across too. But my hypothesis generally comes from questioning where the worldview comes from in the first place about gynocentrism. And then also the point I made earlier is that I am not denying that there may be elements of gynocentrism in society in the West, right? But my contention is that we don't have a gynocentric society overall. Yeah. So I'm saying that we still have patriarchy. We still have a patriarchal society in the sense that men still rule, and especially in a civilizational level. You're always going to have men in power, right? At least we do at this time, okay, who have influence, overt influence, and also philosophically speaking, we have a sort of individualistic framework that is actually based on the male form and the male way of looking at the world, or at least how we think masculinity is in the first place. So that's sort of part of my hypothesis, really, is that a lot of what the feminist theory perhaps is getting at in the past is that after the Enlightenment, we developed this notion of human rights and the rights of the individual, and how we were viewing the world through that lens. And I'm sort of, my starting point with it is that that wasn't at the time defined through how women may see the world, how experience the world, right? So that's sort of the starting point there. And then the other part of my theory, the way that my argument, is my interpretation of the Orthodox faith, okay, what the church teaches, and the added element of ancestral sin, and how that affects how we view men and women, aka Adam and Eve. And I understand that if you're not a Christian, then you're going to reject this worldview. But I have to sort of partly make the case that we shouldn't reject that worldview, in the sense that this is always affecting how human men and women see each other, whether it's through preferencing men or preferencing women. That's probably what I would include into my hypothesis. So I'm happy to reference some studies if it's relevant to that, but that is what my pushback or my position is, where it's coming from, because I basically make the case that we can't necessarily have a gynocentric society overall without patriarchy, because patriarchy will facilitate gynocentrism when it exists. And this idea that patriarchy would do something like that would undermine it in the first place is kind of odd, because, you know, you could say that if you had a study that demonstrated female preferencing, then this assumption that means that the man is going to be it's going to be at the expense of men somehow, I think is very interesting assumption to be made. And the case I would make is that's because you, Alison, and perhaps everyone at Honey Badger Radio, and everyone generally speaking in the MRM, has taken on the gynocentric worldview as a presupposition. So you are looking at it having accepted a conclusion about something in the first place, which then affects how you interpret data, and then start cherry picking and manipulating things that you found to fit that. So I don't know how long you want to give me to keep talking.
No, I mean,
Oh,
if
just
you
keep talking. You finish. I'll keep writing. You keep talking.
All right. Okay. So, in terms of how I see things, okay, I think that feminism was correct, yeah, in the sense that it noted that we do have a patriarchal society, in the sense that the rulers are men, we have the rule of men, and we have preferencing of men in a certain way. Like we had women taking men's surname, and we had property passed down through the male line in that way. Okay. And, you know, throughout all the changes we've had that brings us to modernity, and then like this sort of postmodern technocratic era that we're in now, we're now sort of moving into an area where women's rights are being questioned again, even though they haven't been around for very long. And even you could admit that, Alison, I'm sure. But
are you asking me a question?
Well, I think that was just
I'd prefer if you did not impute my intentions while you are having a conversation.
Okay, all right, no problem, Alison.
Have a discussion on it. I mean, no, I mean, you're saying that the tone of your voice is extremely snarky, but you're having your.
Yeah, I am a little bit snarky. I agree.
You're stating your hypothesis. We're giving you the room to state your hypothesis. I'm merely taking notes so that I can start formulating my rebuttal. If you, in the process of stating your hypothesis, start impugning ideas to me, I feel like I should have the right to respond to that. However, that means you'll have to stop and we'll have to start the response.
Okay, so, fair enough. I won't do that again. No, duly noted.
And please, no more snark. Like, seriously.
Why?
Because it's just, it doesn't facilitate a conversation. Like, why would you approach this in terms of being snarky?
Oh, come on.
No, seriously, why would you approach it? Like, you're talking about the emotional. Okay,
you
one of
guys
us
have
has
been
to
in your, you've been
okay.
in
about the emotional framework that
wait.
Why I can't be
stop. You're talking about the emotional framework that people bring to this thing, and I'm pointing out you are yourself are evincing an emotional framework. All right, continue.
Being snarky is what, an emotional framework?
Yeah, it's an emotional framework of dismissal and contempt.
Yeah, I do have contempt for the worldview that you guys are promoting. Absolutely correct.
All right, well, make the case.
That's your emotional framework. Make the case.
Yeah, and having emotions and feelings about a worldview that I think is doing damage to people is completely appropriate.
Except in a discussion when we're just looking at the facts, right?
Yeah, I am. Well, not really. If I'm talking about a hypothesis or an argument that I'm presenting, whether or not that's factual, isn't that something that we would argue about? So,
I mean, frankly,
coming from there.
Are you complete? Are you done? Can I start addressing it, or do you want to continue?
Hey, you said that I shouldn't impute you.
Yeah, but,
that's a beginning of a digression. Before that, you were still laying out your case. We want to know if you're finished. I want to give you a chance.
Referencing you and saying and acknowledging that you probably don't want women to lose some of the rights that they have now.
You are now again impugning what I believe and think.
Hey, listen, Alison, we've had a lot of interactions in the past, so forgive me for thinking that you probably don't.
No. Well, first of all, my point is that when you start to talk about what I think,
I know
you're no longer talking about what you think. So are you done with what you think, or do you want to continue? Like, let's just bring it down to brass tacks. Giving you the opportunity to lay out your thesis. Are you done? Or your hypothesis? Are you done? Because the last thing that you said was, we are now in an era where women's rights are being questioned, even though they haven't been around for very long. Do you want to continue that thought, or do you want to now discuss what I think? Because you've introduced the topic. That's all I'm going on. You can be as snarky as you want, granted. But at this point, if you want to talk about my thoughts, then we can talk about my thoughts. Are you done with your thoughts?
No.
Okay, then continue. You were speaking on the topic of women's rights being questioned.
Who is leading into what I think about it and where my mindset comes from?
What you think about it, not what I think about it, but what you think about it.
Sure. Okay, so as I said to you, my belief in Orthodox Christianity does influence my worldview here. And I think that part of the reason that I've been pushing back against the promotion of gynocentrism worldview is because the worldview is based on a deep resentment of the Virgin Mary, aka the Mother of God, the Theotokos, right? When you read Peter Wright's writings in his essay, it becomes
all right. Now we're talking about.
Anyway, I'm going to continue because this is very, very relevant.
Let her finish her thing. That's okay. Let her finish her thought on that. Go ahead.
Thank
Natty.
you.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this is actually pretty relevant because I do think it's very interesting that we have a particular worldview being promoted that is based on that, in my opinion. And as an Orthodox Christian, we venerate the Theotokos, the Virgin Mary, and what she did for us. Yeah, in terms of she gave birth to Jesus, she gave birth to the Word, and she engaged in a level of self-sacrifice. Yeah, and she was sinless according to Orthodox theology. She was sinless, and she was chosen by God to do that, and she went through a lot. And I think so. If Peter Wright's gynocentrism theory, which is pretty much the guy that popularized the whole thing, although he's not the only person that's spoken about it, but he is sort of pretty much responsible for it being accepted among the MRM and the right wing at large in terms of the culture war stuff, then he's actually giving credence to the influence of Christianity. So if I'm coming from a perspective that Orthodox Christianity and Christianity generally speaking is true, and he's giving credence to how that has influenced our mindset in the culture, because his argument is pretty much that the way that the Virgin Mary was viewed in the medieval era was that the knight class, who were under feudalism, under chivalry, when chivalry changed from being a code of conduct of behavior for the knight class, and then it became about respecting women above men, is his argument. He's saying that they started to worship the Virgin Mary instead of just maybe venerating her. And this was like a cult, a Marian cult. And then his argument is that eventually this transmuted into a kind of archetype for women in the culture. And so people started to view women as, like, by default, sinless, like the Virgin Mary, and then put women on a sort of mental pedestal. And then men would be being expected to be Christ-like, and women were not expected to be Christ-like. And that's his sort of underlying argument of all of his essays, really. And
okay.
Anyway, I'm going to get to what I think about it. If you just give me 30 more seconds, please, Alison. I know I've been talking a while. So he's sort of comes out at the end of that by saying, hey, women have not been expected to be Christ-like in this kind of servant leadership, or kind of like a self-sacrificial in the way that, generally speaking, it's understood if you're a Christian, you're supposed to be Christ-like and take on a kind of sacrificial way of being in service to others. And he's saying that women weren't particularly expected to do that all this time. And so I have a problem with that. But where I'm going with this is that in Orthodox theology, and generally speaking in Christianity, although not all of the different Protestant denominations necessarily will agree with this at all, that when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, Eve ate the fruit, right? And then she received the truth without God. So that's how it's generally understood, okay? And she sort of represents emotions and intuition and that side of humanity. And Adam ate the fruit, and he ate it willfully, and he sort of represents human will and reason. And then when God comes, Adam says, Eve gave it to me, when God comes and confronts her, and him as well. And he says, Eve gave it to me. And she says, I was deceived. I was deceived by the serpent. And he says, Eve gave it to me. As in, he doesn't take responsibility for the fact that he ate the fruit. He just says, she gave it to me. Okay. And he also hides, which is not a good look, right? And so then God gives the curse to them, and then they fall away from God. And in Orthodox theology, Adam is held responsible overall for that whole situation, right? And then Eve becomes subject to Adam, and that is part of the consequence of the fall. So, that is how this notion of someone being superior and someone being inferior, or slave master, or oppressor oppressed, begins. Because before the fall, there was no understanding of someone being on top or someone being on the bottom. There was an understanding that Adam was the head, as in he represents human will and reason, and he was created first. But there wasn't an understanding that he was somehow superior and she was inferior. That is a consequence of the fall. And so if part of the consequence of the fall and the curse is that Eve is basically constantly subject to Adam, right? That means that she is then naturally like inferior, or seen in a like slave master, or there's a hierarchy formed that isn't the type of hierarchy that existed prior to the fall. So in our church teaching, it says that Adam's will is what needs to be healed first, and he's the head, right? So there is this sort of acknowledgement that, yeah, we have a patriarchy now, basically. And what the patriarchy needs to do is act first, initiate some, follow Christ and be in servant leadership to heal that first. But there's a sort of acknowledgement, right, that there is a patriarchy, and that basically exists, and that man will probably constantly try to have this way of being over and over and over again, because that is sort of the ancestral sin and the consequences of what the fall are. But without even going into how that plays out over time in humanity and where we're at now in modernity, we have tried to not reverse that, but like even it out. We've had feminism, we've had, you know, this egalitarian notion that we should, you know, try and be equal. And now we're moving into a new era where people are trying to go back how they think things were previously again. So like it's all showing us that actually, as much as we like to try to even out and get rid of this patriarchy, we're kind of stuck with it. It's always there. And I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you for letting me talk for a bit longer.
No, that's cool.
Okay.
Allison, go ahead.
I actually have a question, and it's a little bit of a digression. Why did you get involved in men's issues in the first place?
Because I believe that women were not being held accountable, because I had mummy issues.
Okay, so that's your conclusion. So you believe that men's issues are completely invalid? No, sorry. Okay, you believe that men's issues are completely invalid?
No, I never said men's issues were completely invalid.
No, but you said that you think that you got involved with these issues because of an emotional reason or an emotional flaw that you've since presumably resolved. So doesn't that leave all of the issues as invalid? That just as a result of an emotional problem that people have is the only reason why anybody advocates or has an interest in it?
You are making some leaps of logic that are fascinating.
No, I'm just okay. All right. Let me clarify. Look,
yeah, rephrase it, Allison. That's okay. Rephrase it.
All right. You said that you advocated for men's issues as a result of having a problem with your mother, correct?
I can give a much fuller answer. I've answered this question a million times in a short way and in a long way, but I just gave you a very quick thing.
but-
If I may. Not that I'm making an argument for either side, but I'm going to try to explain or see where Allison is coming from. So people get involved with the men's movement for different reasons. And what Natty's answer sounds like is basically it's either, some people are more on the side of like, what are the legal and administrative and legislative issues, maybe even systemic, that men face that we need to address, either because we're pursuing equality, which is maybe somewhere like where Warren Farrell is at, or because we just want to see men treated more fairly, for the people who are like the intactivists. And then you have the people who are like and I'm not saying it's one or the other, there's usually overlap, but then you have the people who are like, well, maybe we just want to hold women to similar standards that we already hold men to, and that would be like a pursue, in pursuit of something that looks like equality as well, but like in another way, assuming equality is the goal. That depends, because like we don't all believe in those concepts, but some do. And I think that what Natty's answer, and let me know if I'm wrong, but your answer seems to be that to that question was more on the side of, I don't think women are held accountable to a satisfactory degree. And I guess in retrospect, you're saying, oh, I think that came from, or I have concluded that came from my experiences with my mother. Am I being fair with that, or unfair?
No, I would say that's a reasonably fair assessment. I think there's more to it. But
can I speak now?
I was giving you a quick answer.
I think Natty wants to give a longer answer.
If you would like, I can give you a much more fleshed out answer, because I am quite a complex person, believe it or not. So I do probably have multiple reasons why I got involved. But I think that there's always a kind of strong draw, and it is emotional, you're correct, that will often brings people into kind of online movements or political movements. And there is a very kind of strong personal emotional reason that will bring them into it, even though there may be intellectual points or facts that have brought them to accepting a position too. But I think often in these things that there will be something that's personal to them.
All right.
Let's go straight for that one, because the accountability issue in terms of women, because as you know, and you've discussed 1,000 times, I have observed and also been involved with in the past, that men's issues are addressed from a more feminist perspective, or perspectives that are not necessarily from the worldview that the men's rights.
All right. We're moving away from the topic. Okay.
No, we're not. I'm acknowledging.
Wait. I'll give you 30 seconds, Natty, then we're going to give Allison the floor.
I'm trying to explain to you that the men's rights movement that you guys have been promoting all this time, the particular worldview that you promote, that you tie into, that is very much interwoven with this idea that women are not held accountable, because there are other people that acknowledge men's issues too, but they don't have that same presupposition.
All right, Allison.
Sorry?
For example, other people who hold or are interested in men's issues but do not feel that women aren't held accountable.
That think that women are held accountable, you mean? Sorry.
Yeah, are held accountable.
I mean,
for example,
I seem to remember in the UK years ago, there was, what was that kind of charity that acknowledged men's issues, but men's rights people like you, I'm not saying you, but like you maybe, would have critiqued and said, oh, they're coming from a more feminist perspective. And so
sure. There's a lot of, like services for men are usually operating within the feminist framework, and like the Good Man Project. The Good Man Project, for example. Yeah.
That's something you guys discussed ad nauseum,
Okay, the feminist framework is that men are ultimately responsible. Let's be frank. That they're ultimately responsible for their own issues. They're ultimately responsible for women's issues. They're ultimately responsible for everyone's issues. That's the feminist framework. That's what we push back against. And to say that if we are against that framework, that we, we're saying that that framework absolves women of their culpability in the situation, because it does. 100%. So the real question that we get to at this point, and I'm going to lay this out, and then I'm going to ask again a follow-up for my question, is that if you believe that men are 100, and I've never seen any point at which feminists will recognize women's culpability, unless it's talking about calling women pick-me's because they don't believe in feminism, but whatever. When you get to that point of saying anything is men's responsibility, what is women's responsibility? Nothing. So we're saying, yeah, that's not correct, but we're doing it in response to an initiative that's saying that men are responsible for everything or nearly everything or functionally everything. So yeah, you're right. We are saying that women aren't held accountable enough, but the feminist framework is that men are the fundamental, the alpha and omega of everything that happens. And I'm saying that's wrong.
Well, I'm telling you that when I first got involved, I agreed with you about that.
That's nice. And then you stopped agreeing with us. So
yes,
but you are saying that you agreed because you had mommy issues. Now,
I think there was other reasons involved, but generally,
okay. You're saying that you are not involved because you have mommy issues. Do you believe that it's possible for someone to think that women are not held accountable enough, particularly within the feminist framework and certain aspects of conservative framework, and not have mommy issues?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but I reckon that there will be something similar in terms of they're lacking.
Now that we've established
your question.
Okay, continue.
I think that's possible, but I'm also saying to you that I think that there probably will be some issues in how they think women's experience is. So their empathy for women, and that it might not be their mom that they have an issue with.
All right, so you think that if they don't have mommy issues, they have issues with. So I'm just saying that people who basically, in response to feminist conjecture that men are fundamentally the responsible for society, and similar to what you're saying about Adam being fundamentally responsible for the fall.
I don't agree with that framework, but okay, for now I'll hear what you have to say about it, but I don't agree with that.
People who push back against that, you're saying are motivated by mommy issues or motivated by other animus against women. Can it just be true? Can people just simply say, this is something that happens and we are pushing back against it? Or is it invalid? It's always a result.
I don't think it's true.
So essentially what you're saying is, as I said, you think the position is invalid. And you think that people pursue this position because of emotional problems with women.
Generally speaking, yeah. There may be a few.
There can be no exception unless you can regard the position itself as valid in some circumstance. You see what I'm saying? Either there is one person out there who is pursuing holding women accountable out of a purely logical, purely reasoned position, and actually this is true. One person has recognized this is true based on not emotional reasoning, or everything is emotional reasoning and everything is wrong.
No.
Okay, but I mean, ultimately, maybe I'm saying this wrong. Let me rephrase it.
Wait. Okay, we'll give Allison. Allison, say it one more, rephrase it or whatever, and then we'll let Natty respond. Okay.
Setting aside the emotional motivation, is the position that women are not held accountable, in particular in feminist frameworks and other frameworks, valid?
You've lost me there. I'm sorry.
Setting aside people's motivations for coming to that conclusion, Is the conclusion valid? Right? Like,
Well, I don't think the conclusion's valid.
So okay, so you believe that there is possibility somebody who hasn't come to this from an emotional reasoning, but for flawed logic, essentially. So we're back at the discussion of the evidence, the discussion of the logic.
No. I can give you how I don't think that humans operate without emotions influencing them at all. I don't think that's possible. In terms of, especially in terms of investing in an ideology or a political movement, I don't think that humans operate that way. I think that there's an intersection of your emotions influencing and motivating you to be biased in one way or another. I don't understand. So I reject this notion that we can be 100% rational at all times. That's just not possible.
Okay, so how do we have a conversation then? If we are all influenced by various emotional factors, where do we come together with any kind of agreement?
Well, we use both. We use reason and emotions together.
Okay, so we're back at reason. Like, how do you use emotions in order to, so explain how you use emotions to benefit this conversation. How about?
Well, I could empathize with you if you're making it a point. If you're telling me a story about something that affected you emotionally, then I can use empathy that will help me to empathize with you and maybe try and feel some of the emotions that you're feeling. That can help our conversation.
Okay. I mean, the thing is that we're talking about an observation of reality, however. So wouldn't, like, this is as close as we can get to a collective experience. So wouldn't studies be more accurate?
Well, my position is that we would use both.
Okay, but all right. So
because when you use studies and statistics, you can't always trust that you haven't got rid of enough of your bias, your perception bias, the conclusion that you may have, the presupposition.
How do you get rid of your perception bias? What is the functional process by which you get rid of your perception bias?
That's a good question. I think by acknowledging that you have it in the first place. Yeah, and I suppose working over a period of time to try and make sure.
Do you feel like you have a perception bias right now?
Probably.
Okay, yeah. What do you think that is?
I think that the gynocentrism worldview is incorrect. So I'm looking at you, and I am less likely to have a conversation with you where I think what you're saying is entirely correct. But I'm sort of at the same time thinking, okay, I know I will agree with Alison about something at some point, and I really want to make sure that when that happens, I tell her, because then she knows I'm not just here to be like, everything you're saying is wrong, Alison.
Okay, well, sure. Tell me when we come to a point of agreement that you feel is correct. But here's my problem. So you're saying that you're not giving a process by which you resolve your perception, aside from saying, well, just acknowledge that you have it, that you have perception issues. But it seems like, let's say we go through this process of resolving our issues around emotional, it almost seems like you're saying that emotions distort how you see things. So if we resolve our perception issues, what we're trying to get to is a point of pure reason, correct?
I don't think trying to get to the point of pure reason is a worthwhile goal, because
yeah, but when you say that you have perception,
hang on a second, Alison. So in terms of the worldview that I'm operating from, that I believe is true, pure reason is like a tool that we use. So for example, when we're doing something scientific, we're using a particular framework and a model to, you know, observe
I'm very
something in
young.
reality.
I understand what pure reason is used for. But I want to get
Okay,
to
so
my point.
what I'm trying to say to you is that in terms of interactions with other humans, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to try and get to a point where you're just using pure reason.
And
You
yet
are not a
you're saying that.
Hang on a minute, Alison. You are not a machine I'm trying to use or trying to observe something in, you know, in a scientific experiment. You are a person with a soul, with biases.
Yeah, that's my business, though. Honestly, that's my business.
Well,
now
if I may, really quick.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
My point is that you are talking about perceptual problems as a result of emotional investment in this, that, or the other. So if you are to get to the truth, don't you have to resolve those perception problems as a result of your emotional investment in things? I mean, because that's what you said. You said that.
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're saying. But I'm operating from a worldview that's influenced by Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, and so therefore there is a thing where we believe that the truth comes from God, and it's more revelatory rather than observable in some instances. In instances of like looking at the material world and kind of in a scientific way, sure, but we acknowledge that there is more than that. You know, there's a spiritual realm, and God does communicate to us sometimes. And so I'm not trying to like be an apologist here. I'm just trying to explain that I am not coming from the same framework as you, I think. So I'm just saying that the Adam and Eve story is quite interesting.
Yeah,
because
and I know that you think that you're coming from a different framework. I suspect you think you're coming from a superior framework. Whereas, like, as I said,
I don't believe that I'm superior to anybody because I'm a sinner. So.
Oh, okay. All right. But the thing is that you believe that you've come closer to an understanding of what is actually happening, right? Than I have, because I am probably, in your estimation, still thinking through an emotional lens that I haven't resolved. Is what I get. I suspect is what you're saying. I could be wrong. You can.
Yeah, I mean,
you can use that moment of agreement to say yes, Alison. That's exactly.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not sure it's exact. I think my observation of you is that you're very like, you know, you're using reason and
yes, because I respect the
intellectualizing
people around me.
Oh, sorry?
I respect the people around me. I'm not going to say that if they bring reason and logic, I'm going to respect that for what it is. Every time I talk to people, I'm prepared to be wrong. That's why I ask questions.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So
I just want, okay, if I may, just briefly.
I just wanted to. Can I finish my thought about?
Go ahead.
Brian has been squashed a couple times, so why don't we let him go?
All I wanted to say is that there seems to be like a binary conversation happening where it's either your logic or your emotion, and the truth is we're complicated beings. Obviously, there is no one on like that I know of that is pure logic, but I do think that we try to like look at, you know, we try to operate within logic and reason, but you can't completely, and I don't think anyone would pretend like emotions don't have any effect on us. I mean, activists, for example, that advocate against circumcision probably have a story to tell that they have a bad experience with, but it's not the method by which they advocate for activism to stop mutilating baby boys. Instead, they bring out all of the data because they know that purely emotional argumentation is generally not effective, and it comes across as solipsistic. But what's better, and if you want to actually make change, is you show people this is the actual consequences. And not only that, but it's effective because would-be parents will look at that and say, well, I don't want to do that to my child. And that's not them saying, this is all of the rational reasons why that we would do that. It's more, out of a love to protect their children from mutilation. So all I'm saying is, this isn't like argument one way or the other, but I think that it's a little uncharitable to say that, this pure thing over here of reason or this pure thing of emotion are like wrong or right for this reason or that reason, because nobody works that way. That's all. So I'm sorry, who was talking? Who wanted to talk? Was it Natty? You can talk now.
No, I'm just putting my thumb up. I was just saying, yeah, I think that's a good summary there, because my argument is that we will use a mixture of both, and that we shouldn't really try to claim that we are not influenced by one or the other. Although I know it's claimed often a lot that people are just speaking from their emotional point of view, and there's no reason involved, and that clearly happens too. But actually, what I was going to say about Alison is that my observation of Alison is that, and I'm not saying this is 100% correct, but this is my perception of Alison, is that she tries to operate in the reason category more often than not, and therefore maybe is in danger of not acknowledging the emotional side influencing her ability to reason. And I'm saying I don't think it's a good idea to actually try and convince yourself that you're like that at all times, because actually where I'm coming from is that often we will find people that tend to be operating in that way, and they're often very monotone types, they're kind of like in this, like, I am just talking from my reason, that kind of stereotype. And then they seem to embrace ideas that actually seem nonsensical or even irrational. But then they cherry pick data and find information that may justify their reasoning for picking it. But actually, when you really investigate with them why they went that way, it tends to be that there was something emotional or something about themselves as a person, their influence that got them there. And so I guess I'm just trying to point out that I don't think it's a good idea to try and claim that we can operate like that, especially when you're in a conversation with another person.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm not claiming we don't operate without emotion, but the goal is to operate in a place of reason, because reason is respectful to the people around you, in my opinion. It is the ultimate meritocracy, where people can offer a reasoned, logical argument and have it considered. So the ultimate, and again, I'm not saying that people are pure logic or pure reason. I'm saying that that is the goal when we are discussing a shared experience, is logic and reason and looking at things through facts.
Just to add to that, I think that the thing is, obviously human beings are made up of both, but emotions are easy. We have them very early on. We know what they are. We will express them often, but reason is something we work towards. So, and a lot of people don't do that. But what we want to do is obviously try to be, because the purpose of reason is, as Alison said, it's to try to come to conclusions that are the closest to the truth. Let's put it that way. As close to the truth as we can get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that when we go into, what I've noticed is that when we go into this emotional reasoning, what ends up happening is the person with the greatest amount of power wins. The greatest amount of willingness to do violence, either emotional or physically, to someone else wins. Their emotions become the dominant emotions. So
yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. Sorry, finish your point.
So when we enter the realm of reason and logic, we are setting aside our weaponry, like going into the parliament, setting aside our weaponry and choosing to use arguments and persuasion in order to achieve some kind of a consensus. That is what I see. So yes, I'm aware that I have emotions. And in fact, when I have emotions about something, I generally look at them and ask myself, what is this telling me about my own biases? And in fact, a lot of the time when I arrive at the conclusion that women are not held to account, it's because I have an immediate knee-jerk emotional reaction to holding women to account. So I have often the opposite emotional reaction to the reason argument that I eventually give. For example, there was a story recently in the UK in which I think he was might have been Nigerian. He was definitely African, an African immigrant who approached a woman, an American tourist, on a train station, grabbed her ass, and she brandished a knife. He ran away, and in the ensuing scuffle, he ended up being stabbed to death. Now, my immediate response was, get rid of the fucker. Just annihilate that asshole who had the audacity to touch a woman. How dare he? That was my initial response. They should all just die. All of those men who touch women without women's consent, they should all just be sent out back and shot. That was my initial emotional reaction. But then I stepped back and I said, let me step through this logically, because I'm having a very strong emotional reaction, which is clouding my judgment. And I thought about it and I said, I don't believe from a logical, legal, rational, and socially humanitarian stance that killing a man for grabbing a woman's ass is correct. That's how I operate often. I do have an emotional response consistent with what you would call gynocentrism. And then I question it and I ask myself, is this reasonable? And that's how I come to a lot of the responses that I have. So, I mean, when you say I have this in particular emotional framework, I probably share it with you, Natty. It's just that I stop and I ask myself, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Would you say, I have a question then, would you say that when you do that sometimes you then end up completely distrusting the emotional response you may have in its entirety? Or do you try and like reduce it a little bit and still have an element of it there?
I always test my emotional responses against the principles of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And if the principle of justice says this is actually an injustice, then I don't think it's an incorrect response. And in fact, I've never actually gotten rid of my disgust towards men who engage in sexual aggression against women, impropriety against women. It's still there.
Right.
Probably you have it as well. And I still have to ask myself, is this response consistent with the principles of justice?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And I mean, are you saying that if you heard if you heard the opposite story, so like
I don't have a stronger response. Like I'll be completely honest. Like if I heard the opposite story, a man stabbing a woman for grabbing his ass, I would actually be, I have the same emotional thing of, how dare, like how would an awful thing for him to do to a woman. I still have that same emotional response. It's just that I say, what are the principles of justice? What are the principles of justice here?
Mm-hmm.
And, well, of course, they're a little bit more consistent in that circumstance. Nobody has the right to stab someone for grabbing their ass, right? That's what I mean. Like, and this is what I'm getting from this whole conversation. You're saying that people have emotional biases. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. They do. That's why we have to step back and think, are these emotions consistent with the principles of justice? Yes or no, right? I mean, I'm not a robot. I know that I have emotions and I know that I'm emotionally influenced. I've actually think that my advocacy for men's issues because my mother died when she was in her 50s, about, I guess 18 years ago now. My advocacy for men's
Sorry to hear
issues actually made me appreciate my mother more. Her moral courage was
Okay.
incredible, and her loyalty to my father was absolute, and she was the one who started me on this path. So if I have mommy issues in relation to men's issues, it's almost like a recognition of how awesome my mother was that I'm doing this. And what she taught me through her example, that you don't back down from what you believe because someone is being emotionally aggressive towards you, someone is giving you a carrot or a stick, someone's calling you a pick-me or a handmaiden, or impugning your sex life as being subpar, or calling you a coward. You don't step back, you don't stop. You stand by what you believe, even in the face of whatever people can throw at you. That's the lesson my mother taught me. And the only thing that will stop me from standing for what I believe is a reasoned argument that I can't tear apart in 10 seconds.
Right. But the thing is,
we can talk about the rest of what you said, because I have wrote
the gynocentrism worldview is not a reasoned argument.
Okay, so let's go back to the
let's back up a little bit.
That's what I'm
Allison,
doing. I'm going back to the first part. Okay, so now I've read a lot of the literature related to what people term gynocentrism, which is simply like a bias toward other people call it the women are wonderful effect, or implicit bias and other kind of stuff like that. I've done a lot of reading on it.
Okay, so hang on a second.
Yeah, I know, but here's my point.
It's not the same as making an argument that we have a culture that's women-centered at the expense of men.
No. Like here's the issue. Okay, I think we're arguing two things. Okay, now, when you say women-centered at the expense of men, okay, what you're saying is, and again, it could be because people have the desire to benefit women, but don't have the means, or it can have the means and the desire. And you're saying that there is no desire to benefit women. Well, again, we go back to the literature, which I've read. Have you read the literature?
About gynocentrism theory?
No, not about gynocentrism theory. About implicit, not the women are wonderful effect.
We've already gone over that. I was saying to you that if you want to go through some of the studies that you've used,
yeah, but why haven't you read them? Like, why haven't you? Here's my problem.
My argument.
You read them yet?
My argument is based.
Why haven't you done the literature review? Why haven't you looked at the evidence
review?
Okay. All right. Well, can I just interject with a question? Okay, so while we're talking about whatever we call gynocentrism, I think that it's a bit of a charged word, because I think we have like different interpretations of it. But let's just say that, is it fair that we understand that there is a real valid reason why a woman's safety and security is more important than a man's? However you feel about that, irrelevant, right? Like, if you think it's unfair to men or whatever, or you think it's overstated, does it make sense that women were given priority in terms of their safety and their security, and it was men's job to do it? And this is not a gotcha. I'm just saying that because sometimes when people talk about gynocentrism, it's framed in this is not fair and it should not exist. But my belief is that, well, actually, to some degree, it is fair, and that's just the way it is. It's sort of like, it's almost becomes used for the reason why, let's send women to war because we're equal and let's see how they like it. But nobody wants to do that. We find it distasteful, right? Any normal person would. And it wouldn't be good, not only because we need women, to perpetuate the species, but also because it's just something that we're not comfortable with it as a principle. And I think that whether you believe in our divine origins or evolution, it's the same outcome. It's the same thing, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that if you disagree with gynocentrism, but we agree on the let's say what appear to be the characteristics, which is that men put, like, our society makes an effort to protect and provide for women so that they survive and reproduce, because that is in our nature to do that, then, like, I don't know, like, we could be talking, or you guys could be talking past each other a bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And that's what actually I'm trying to get at. Regardless of what you call it, what is picked up in the literature is things like people prefer to benefit women. People prefer to harm men, like if there has to be harm to men or women. Women have more bias towards other women than men have bias towards other men. This is stuff that's picked up in the literature. Then the literature, it's also termed omega bias or women are wonderful effect. So the question is, you've decided, and it could also be termed like the gynocentrism is within that umbrella. And then also Brian's saying that, oh yeah, I guess that is a good point, Brian. Do you believe that women should be put first, Natty?
It depends what you mean by put first, because I don't actually believe that
protected and provided. It doesn't matter. Protected and provided for, in a way that we don't do to men, essentially.
Well, life is suffering, right? Life is suffering ultimately. So either men are going to take the brunt of that, or women are going to take the brunt of that, or children are going to take the brunt of that. And obviously, we don't want that for children. And I think that when it comes down to just men or women, men, not only are they expected to do it, but they're willing to do it. Like, they're more willing to be, to essentially endure whatever the suffering is in order to, like, protect their communities and their families and such like that.
I don't agree that they actually do. I think throughout history, men have been incentivized to do that.
Okay, but we're a little bit off the topic. Do you believe that what men should do?
Please, Alison.
We're off topic. Do you believe that what men what men should do? What Brian said. You're saying that you understand they didn't do it.
Hang on a minute. What is it? Can you close the door, please? Okay, come here. Do I believe that men should be doing that for women? Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what? I don't think we should continue.
Like I said to you before,
let her finish.
No,
Alison,
honestly,
let her finish.
I'm really uncomfortable with having a kid on stream because this is our channel and we could get it stricken. Because
that's true. I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
So please,
I'm
please deal with the situation. Just deal with the situation.
If you have children on your channel, then you have to be. No, that's fine. That's fine, Alison. It's okay. Just give me a sec. I will give him back to his dad. Sometimes they know that I'm doing this, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to get interrupted.
No, I'm not. I don't have a problem with the interruption. My problem is the fact that
I know on your channel, if you have a child, then you have to put it as child. I understand that. Thank you. 1 minute. Hey, mister, where's that?
All right. We'll just a moment. InQcell, I see you in here. I'm sorry. If you want to listen to the actual conversation, go to the YouTube channel and check it out there. I know you're like, he's been hanging around in the Twitter space for the entire time, like quietly. I know he's like, you're cool though, bro.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't.
It's all right.
They're watching Star Wars.
It's okay. You can't help it.
If you're watching Star Wars, you don't leave. If you're a kid and you're watching Star Wars for the first time, but
yeah.
He is the youngest. Anyway, let me keep going. So, what was I going to say?
Do you believe that is? I think that the question was, do you believe that women should be provide, not whether or not it's happening, but do you believe that it should be the case? I guess.
So they should be protected and provided for, or like, is that specifically what you're asking? Or
Actually,
general
can I get in here and actually ask it in relation to what you were talking about during
okay,
the point
sure.
where you were laying down your thesis?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that men should take responsibility for women's actions?
No.
Okay, in what circumstances do men not take responsibility for women's actions?
I don't think that men take responsibility for women's actions now.
No. Do you think they should?
No.
Not do you. So you
No.
don't think they should. So the situation now is good. All right.
I mean, the situation now at this particular moment in our culture, in both the UK and the US, I would say that there's generally a kind of egalitarian, relatively equitable in terms of like who's being held accountable or who's been responsible. I still think that there's issues with how patriarchal attitudes. And I do think that, hang on, Alison, my gosh, please. I do think that there are elements of gynocentrism, but overall, yeah, I don't think that we have a gynocentric society overall.
Okay.
Yeah, like as a kind of umbrella overall. Anyway, so let me try and finish what I think you're getting at, right? In my worldview, Adam, as in man as in Adam, right, has headship. And headship is not necessarily about being some kind of dictator.
But that's not the question.
Hang on, I'm going to answer your question. Let me get it out. He's not a dictator, but at the same time, he is not like just taking on all of the responsibility, like Peter Wright claims in his writing, where he is like literally laying down and taking on everything that a woman throws at him and taking on all the responsibility or accountability, sorry, is the right word, for actions that she may make. I don't believe either of those two positions are what we should be striving for at all. Headship in Orthodox Christianity and Christianity generally speaking is that if Adam is submitting himself to God and to the virtues and the framework that Christianity gives him, he is leading in service. So there's this term servant leadership, okay? But he's in service to God, right? And to be in service to God, you need to be in service to everyone else around you, because as a Christian, you're supposed to try and put other people's needs first, because God's given you mercy, God forgives, and so you forgive others, and you're following God. You're following what Christ taught you from the New Testament. And women are supposed to be doing the same thing, but the difference is that Adam is doing it first because he's the head. There's headship, okay? And headship is not about. Please don't interrupt me again, please. I know, but you need to not interrupt me again. I have told you not to do that, okay? I love you, but I can't have Micah here. Sorry. No, just go and tell Daddy that. I know, but you need to go and tell Daddy that, please. I can't, because you can't have children on her street, and she's going to get mad at me if you come again, okay? I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe we should just continue another day.
Yeah, we might. Okay, finish your point, but we may have to wrap this up soon because the babies are getting restless.
Very soon.
Yeah.
All right. So no, he'll be fine when he realizes that he's got Daddy. Yeah, and he loves Daddy. Don't worry. Anyway, so what I'm trying to explain is this. I don't think that the kind of more worldly example of what kind of like headship looks like. Oh my gosh.
Okay, I think that this is really just not going to really functionally work at this point. I think that she's just has too many responsibilities at this time. But what I was trying to get at with that is we can talk about women, men protecting and providing for women. One of the big things that seems to be the point of contention is men taking responsibility for women and women's actions.
Right, I've locked my door now. I actually have a lock on the door, so no problem. All right. Okay, so what I'm trying to say to you is that this kind of idea that you need to choose between these two extremes is something that I'm just trying to challenge. I'm saying that Adam having headship, or men having headship in general, it's not based on this idea that the woman doesn't have any responsibility and that she is not held accountable for any of her actions, because she has her own domain, and she also is trying to help Adam, because she's also trying to provide, to be in service. So let me give you this teaching that I always quote when I talk about this. In the New Testament, there's this exegesis idea that observation, that Jesus is the prophet, the priest, and the king, right? 3 different roles. And if we are to follow and be Christ-like as Christians, then we have to fulfill those 3 roles at some point in our lives, right? And and this sort of follows a kind of transmutation of the Holy Trinity, which has 3 persons, there's 3 roles, right? In that way. And so the Adam starts off with the kingly office, right? That's his primary office. He fulfills the kingly role, all right? Okay. And then Eve starts off as the woman starts off with the prophet office, okay? And a prophet is someone who's a truth teller, who receives revelation from the Holy Spirit. Yeah, that's what a prophet generally is when you look in the Bible. And so the prophet and the king are going to work together, because a king will maybe leading from the front and leading by example, but the prophet will be helping to guide the king, will be giving the king information, right? And so then they're working together in that way, but they are to fulfill that office in a priestly manner, which means they're trying to submit to God and trying to live the ascetic life in a way that a priest may do, right? And then there's this idea that once they've fulfilled that office, then they can sort of move into the opposite office. So the king can be more prophet-like, and the prophet, the woman, can be more kingly-like or queenly if she's a woman. So if you think about it, when a woman becomes older, she's more matriarchal, she's more likely to have a sort of more leadership role or be more respected in that role as an older woman. A man, when he becomes older, he's more likely to become, he's going to become wise, which is where this kind of wise old man stereotype comes from, right? And then you fulfill that in a priestly manner. The reason I'm bringing this in is I'm trying to say that I think as part of our fallen state in humanity, there is this idea that men should be leading by example and should be leading from the front, and maybe should be sacrificing themselves for others in that sense, right? Because they should be kind of kingly in this way. And I think this is something that God tells us, but because if you're not a Christian, you're not necessarily doing it in submission to God. It's just something that is there, something that most of us have a bias of, that we experience, yeah. And so the other interesting part about this, and this is what links to Peter Wright's gynocentrism theory, is that his theory, as far as I'm concerned, is based on this deep resentment about Mary, the Mother of God, the Theotokos.
We're on talking about Peter again?
Hang on a second. It's relevant to the point. He dismisses the fact that she said yes to God. The Holy Spirit put Jesus in her, okay? Then she went through a process, a self-sacrificial process too, right? To give birth to him. And then when he was alive, she was also doing, she sacrificed too, right? So there's a sort of complete dismissal of the fact that, yeah, a man may be expected to be leading from the front in a kind of charging from the front type of way. He may be fighting in a war. He may be doing things in a more physical manner, maybe, okay? But then there's this complete dismissal that a woman may be actually her sort of prophet-like role, actually is linked to the fact that she may become a mother, and there is some a level of service or sacrifice involved in that. And those two things are, in our society, I don't believe, are deemed to be equitable or co-equal, right? So they're not the same, but they're equal in status. Yeah. So I'm trying to, one of the reasons why that I dismiss the idea that we're gynocentric overall now is because our culture does not value that aspect of womanhood in a co-equal way to some of the
because it's sacrifice and responsibility.
Huh?
Like that you are describing the Marian example as sacrifice and responsibility. It's probably why the monks of Mount Athos, did I say that right, Brian?
Yeah.
Say that the only woman who's allowed to enter their monastery is Mother Mary, because she represents an ideal of sacrifice and responsibility that no woman can truly live up to. Mm-hmm. No woman can embody.
Well, in the same way that men can't live up to Christ, but they work towards it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, they work towards it. But I think that from talking to Peter, which I occasionally do, and I'm probably putting words in his mouth because we do disagree. I think that he has no problem with the Marian example of responsibility and sacrifice. His problem is that he doesn't think women are held to it. And this is going back to the entire argument here. The whole argument around women's accountability. I mean, as I was listening to you, it occurred to me, maybe this will sum it up concisely, is we as a society do not hold women to the same level of account for their behavior towards men as we hold men towards their behavior towards women. And I mean, we can have a discussion on whether or not that's the case. I mean, I can cite the statistics regarding how we sentence women for crimes against men, whether or not we even think about women's crimes against men, or just simply excuse them by saying, oh, they're allegedly fewer of them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what it all comes down to. It's the
and then I can quote, and then I can mention the terribly low rape conviction rates, that they don't seem to be able to have worked out a way of actually convicting rapists properly.
Oh, that is, are you talking about in the UK? All right, here we go. I'm going to give you a resource. The conviction rates of rape in the UK are actually a half times higher than any other crime. And that is,
well done.
That is on, and in the US, the conviction rates for rape are 4 times higher. Like, the conviction rate for a reported violent crime, most reported violent crimes is about 2%, might be 2.7, so don't quote me. The conviction rate for sexual assault and other like contact sexual crimes is 8%. So once it's reported, that's the conviction rate. So this is absolute nonsense. And where it comes from is feminists are taking the rate at which people respond to questions on an anonymous survey, which is, have you been forced to have sex in the last year? They are often lumping together the male respondents with the female, getting a total population estimate, and then comparing that to the rate of convictions of rape. That is completely dishonest. Now, I can get you that resource right now.
Okay, so when I was doing men's rights activism stuff, and I interviewed Barnet Survivors Limited, who specializes in working with men who've been falsely accused, he said to me, the biggest issue overall is the rape conviction rate, that it needs to be higher, and that prevalence of rape is more than what he sees in terms of the conviction.
That's fair enough.
Wait a minute.
Hang on.
Wait, let Natty finish. But I do want to say something to that after.
Even though you could say that he actually has a bias in favor of the other way, to say that there's more false accusations and that there's an issue with false accusations. You could even claim that he's actually coming from a biased point of view, and he even says that there's an issue there, right? And the amount of sexual assault that if you just do surveys, and we could even go into whatever, right? When you actually find out the prevalence of sexual assault and then rape, those two together, yeah, you find that they don't get reported as often as they should. And that's what he's talking about as well. He's saying that that, you know, a lot of women won't go through the trouble of reporting them. So the reason I bring that up is I'm trying to say to you, I recognize the criminal justice gap data. I haven't rejected that and saying that that's completely incorrect. I'm saying that, well, you've got that, and then you've got the sexual assault and rape issue, and then you put them together and you're like, okay, well, this kind of evens each other out. It doesn't.
It does absolutely does not. Now, I know that in the UK, it's not, a woman can't rape a man legally. But the fact is that the amount of men who are victims and do not report is far higher than the amount of more women and do not report. So we're looking at a system that when women report, actually preferentially they see justice. Now, maybe they don't want to report for whatever reason. That's on them. It's their decision. It's like if you go to a buffet and you choose the chicken and not the beef, that's on you.
Why is that decision being made, Alison?
Sorry, what? Why should the decision be made? Because criminals exist of both sexes, and that's probably going to.
No, I'm saying, why is the decision that the woman is not going to report?
Probably because feminists have told her that she's not going to get justice. In fact, we've heard examples of that in our own show.
No, I'm sorry. That attitude existed before feminism.
Well, but also the conviction.
Did we have data before feminism?
Yes, we do have data before feminism.
Before which incarnation of feminism?
Before feminism.
We have data before.
I think that we're really floating around a lot in the theoretical right now because we can't know what we don't know. And no, but I'm saying when you say, well, obviously these crimes happen, even though they're not reporting it. I'm like, well, how do we know they're happening?
Because surveys.
Have surveys that tell us about that.
Yeah, so there are anonymous surveys, but the problem is those anonymous surveys are uncovering incredibly high rates of sexual violence against men by women that men do not report at all. Like, and here's the thing. This is what I'm saying. The option is available. The option is available. Let me finish. The option is available to women.
Alison, at no point in this conversation have I said that women don't do any bad things to men.
The option is available to women. Well, you're saying that women are.
I understand that, but okay. Then we start to talk about what the issues in terms of how.
Maddie, let me finish. Let me finish. I'm saying that when women are subject to sexual violence by men, possibly not by other women, they are allowed, or they have the option to report. And when they report, the justice system will see justice more than victims of other violent crimes. They are more likely to see justice relative to victims of other violent crimes. Men do not report at all. Men who are survivors of these issues have said that the cops laugh at them, that there is huge barriers to report.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that those barriers to say that situation is equal for female victims.
You need to make sure that you understand when I'm talking about a women's issue, I am not dismissing that men may have an issue that's similar or the same. I am not doing that at all. And that tends to be how you guys have operated for a long time now. That you think that automatically that's what a woman or a feminist or whoever is doing. I'm not doing that.
You're saying that
everything that I have.
Wait, when you both talk, nobody can hear.
All
right.
Okay. But you are. But this is a digression because the original statement.
It's not a digression. It's not a digression. We can go back to.
We can go back to the original
example.
The original statement was that I said women are not held to account in the same way that men are held to account. And I used the example of sexual abuse. I mean, it's patently obvious and inarguable. You can't even, a woman cannot even be charged with rape in the UK for using sexual violence against the men. In fact, statutory rape may not even really exist when when a woman in the UK has sex with an underage boy. Like that I've looked at the statute. It's like they can't, I don't know what they call it. It's almost like it doesn't exist. So the situation is that in the law, women aren't held as accountable. Now, in practice,
are you trying to claim that women rape, as in statutory rape the same rate as men or more?
I have been literally, Maddie, you just demonstrated that you have no idea of what I do.
I do know what you know.
Wait.
I know that you misrepresent data as well.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Allison.
You have done numerous times, and it's been pointed out to
no,
you.
It has not. It has not been correctly pointed out. And here's the problem. When we're talking about a conclusion.
So that's why in this conversation, I've tried to be like, look, the worldview that you have.
Can I finish? Because you are wrong.
Where it came from. That's why.
This information is
not
not
be honest
incorrect.
about the data at all. I'm sorry.
You are not being honest about the data.
I'm gonna.
The honest about truth is that
I'll shut up for a second.
All right, yes, I'm gonna start muting people. Okay, go ahead, Allison.
Finally,
let's try not to throw any ad hominems or anything. No, it's fine. It's fine. Let's try not to throw any ad hominems. Get your pussy off the camera, Allison. Okay, go ahead and. Just kidding.
Right.
Go ahead.
So the data, and first of all, this is something I've talked to. There are two issues here. One, are women held to the same account when they are sexually aggressive against men as men are in the reverse? And the answer is no, they're not. They're absolutely not. Okay. Doesn't matter if we look at prevalence. That doesn't matter. That's an issue of rates of sociopathy plus abuse, unaddressed abuse in the population. That's what prevalence relates to. Now, the second issue is the science around who is doing what. First of all of the statistics that I've seen that have shown a greater rate, or most of them, at least if they're not feminist, have said that they do not know if the greater rate of women reporting is due to an actual situation where women are experiencing more, or if it's because of all of the barriers to men reporting. And then we find the surveys that do show equal rates of men reporting or greater, or high rates of women reporting their own sexual violence. Now, what is that situation? You can't just ignore the fact that we have methodologies now that find equal or greater rates of male victimization. You can't just ignore that. When you are asserting that women are the primary victims of something, you are making an assertion. You are actually making a causal hypothesis. And that causal hypothesis is that being a woman equals a greater rate of being sexually victimized. Now, if you find data points that oppose your causal hypothesis, you can't keep asserting it, period. There's no way you can keep asserting it honestly. That is what I'm saying.
We are not going through the data right now, are we? Yeah.
No, because
we've gone for a while, so like almost 2 hours. I don't know. Like we can, Natty, if you're fine with it, we can have you back on and talk about whatever you want. I don't know if Allison's fine with it, but
I have about 30 points that we could discuss.
And
we could go through a bunch of stuff.
If you want to send me the links of the data that you're using in advance, and I can.
You already said that they've been discredited, so you already have them. All right.
Yeah. So I mean, I have seen some stuff before, but I don't know what exactly you're talking about now.
It doesn't matter how many there are. There are a sufficient number to indicate that your hypothesis has to go back to the drawing board, and you shouldn't be directing policy.
There are other ways that I can bring up now that will indicate to you, indicate to the audience or whatever that this can't necessarily be true overall, right? One of them would be porn usage, for example. Okay, so 60 to 70% of men use porn on the regular, and women between 4
Wait,
to 14.
Allison, let her finish. Let her finish. No, it's okay. Let her finish. Go ahead,
Okay.
Natty.
That's one example that will demonstrate to you the levels of urges of sexuality and the kind of like prevalence of how often men need to have sex or watch people having sex, and then you start to talk about what they're viewing and how rough and aggressive that sexual act may be, and what that may tell you about what it is that they primarily want.
If I may ask, how are we defining porn in this instance? Out of curiosity, because there's a lot of stuff that's borderline out there, but I just want to know.
Well, I'm talking about watching people having sex on the internet, not just looking at naked pictures of ladies and men.
How about also written pornography? Does that not count?
You mean like sex books about sex and stuff, like a Mills and Boon book, or
literally
50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah. 50 Shades of Grey.
Well, fiction.
50 Shades of Grey, and as an example, is a BDSM story where the woman is pretending to be a victim of, giving consent.
What does porn have to do with the the thing is that
I'm talking it has to do with it, Alison.
I'm talking about actual stats on the rate at which people.
Okay.
Let me give you an example.
No, you know what? This is nonsense. The prevalence who uses porn has nothing to do. You're like, I dismiss the rate at which people reveal that they've been sexually abused. I'm going to talk about porn to approximate what? Nothing. Like you cannot be presenting this idea. Didn't have a question. You cannot honestly be presenting this idea that stats about the rate of porn use has more relevance to the rate at which men and women are subject to sexual abuse than the statistics related to men and women revealing how much they're subject to sexual abuse. This is nonsense.
Again,
I'm not going to be part of it.
How could like porn usage not tell us anything about the psychology of those who are watching it?
Porn usage represents people's fantasies. They don't always act out their fantasies. In fact, I have a study that shows both men and women prefer the submissive position in BDSM. Okay? Right. And also that when women do look at porn, it's the more violent stuff. All of this stuff is irrelevant.
Yeah, and you know what's very interesting. It's more violent stuff.
Wait.
Engage in the acts they're in.
If you're both talking,
entertainment does not mean they're going to engage in the acts they're in. Let's look at what they say about what they've experienced. Oh, shoot! My cord.
Oh my God. Okay.
But at least I'm not the only one that got interrupted by something.
Yeah. Well, we should. I think this is like another conversation. We should. I don't think we shouldn't have it, but I'm saying like this has been going for 2 hours, and I'm getting hungry, getting a little hangry, and
I don't even know what we're going to do with the X space. Nobody's in it. So.
Oh, and no one's in it. I mean, NQ is in it. I don't mean to disrespect, bro. He's been chilling in there. He's probably fine. But I don't want to like make this longer. But I would say this. I think we should put a pause. Maybe do another one. If Natty's okay with it, we can set another day and talk more. I think this is a fascinating conversation. I hope that you guys are enjoying it as well. It's like the only reason why I want to do this was because I wanted people to have these discussions. I will say that I don't think it's, and this is like just a little critique. I don't think it's fair to hold us to like your disagreements with Peter Wright have nothing to do with us really. Like if you disagree with him, I don't know everything that he's written. I don't read his stuff. He's DM'd me a couple of times. I think that the term gynocentrism is really overused. That doesn't mean that I don't think there's something there that is worth talking about. That's always been my position. And I don't even use it that much, the term myself, because I do think it could be overused. Like a lot of things, it could be used to just explain away everything. And I don't think it's necessarily bad that men, generally like put themselves in harm's way to protect women and children. I think that's probably the way it should be. And that's okay, right? And so, but I would just say that in the future, if we're going to discuss gynocentrism, that's fine. But I don't want to answer for Peter Wright. I don't think Allison would either.
No, I
so
don't.
I think that we should talk about it outside of that, if possible.
Not the least of which is me and Peter have our own disagreements. So I don't want to speak for him because then I'll be putting words in his mouth.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
My response to that is that he was the one who popularized this term more than anyone else. And so anyone's using it is in reference to what he's put out there.
Yeah. And I also know that he generally avoids confrontation. So I'm sure that you've probably tried to call him out multiple times and he just doesn't respond to you.
Have a live discussion with people.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But instead he probably likes to try and put messaging out there that gets people to attack me or others and smear them in.
Well, again, I don't think we should answer for any of that either. I know there's a lot of people on X that, like they have their cliques and all that. I don't do that at all. I just stick to this because I don't know anything about it. So again, I don't know anything about the flying monkeys. I know that there are flying monkeys, but I don't deal with that at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that Peter is engaging in any of that. He doesn't
do the dirty work himself. He gets
I don't even think he's actually even inciting anything either. From my conversation with, I don't think so. I think that this is just people who are upset with the things that you say on Twitter.
There are some people that are terminally online, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think that you could, pick your battles is how I see it. So
yeah, pick your battles. And the thing is that there are all kinds of people on Twitter who will get upset at what you say and have strange.
Of course, that's what Twitter's like, or X even, as it's called now. Yeah, I think you guys are being disingenuous about that, but I'm not going to labor that point.
What do you mean disingenuous? I'm saying what I observed from having a closer association with Peter Wright. I do not think that he is in any way responsible for sending flying monkeys towards you. I don't think he thinks about you enough to do such a thing. Like, honestly, I'll be really honest.
I haven't claimed that he thinks about me all the time at all. I'm not claiming that.
Yeah, but he would have to in order to.
I do know though that the worldview that he promotes, it does put this messaging out there that if a woman disagrees, say like I am, I'm a bit of a betrayer. I left believing and promoting this worldview, which is very similar to what you guys are doing, right? Okay, and there are others that have done the same, and they've been treated to a very similar weird smear campaign with certain people who then, well, especially as a woman, because the whole thing is that female narcissism is what's running society, and women are being encouraged to become narcissistic, and therefore, if I'm a woman who disagrees with that, then therefore I must be an example of it. Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you do the same thing, Natty, when you talk about how people have these mother issues and they advocate for men's rights. Like, I don't diagnose
people with mental health conditions based on the fact that I don't like them. I might say,
you're probably using the colloquial term narcissism.
You may have an issue with your mom or your dad. That is not the same thing as claiming somebody's a psychopath, a sociopath, a narcissist, personality disorder. Yeah, these are, as what would you call a threat narrative, or
they could also be using the colloquial term for narcissist, because if women are being encouraged to be narcissists, that's not clinical narcissism. Clinical narcissism is a result likely of
the use of that term narcissism now is done in a deliberate way, where I could say something like that was narcissistic, or saying that in that way sounds narcissistic, and then someone goes, well, that person's a narcissist, right? And then immediately there's this association that they have narcissistic personality disorder, and that they are therefore in this category of being insane and crazy. Yeah. And then immediately you are to just dismiss that person. And
Well, I
that's
don't. I just, again, I talk about,
what would you call that
I talk about people's logic and reason. You know, you're right. There's no point bringing it to the area, oh, you've got mother issues. Everything comes down to logic and reason, because that's the place.
Everything does not come down to logic.
You set aside your aspirations against people's character. You set aside your emotional tools, and I
try to stay faithful to the fact that I understand that those two things
are like you want to keep the weapons for yourself, but you don't want other people deploying them against you.
No,
but regardless, I really need to get going. But
I understand you need to get going. I'll just say a couple of comments. As I said, the idea that the West is gynocentric, as far as I'm concerned, comes from a framework and a theory that is anti-Christian in nature, and particularly is an attack on what the Theotokos did, or what, even if you don't agree that she actually existed and you're not a Christian, you can at least acknowledge that the archetype, or how this transmuted in the culture, in the influence on women in our culture, is what he's saying in the theory. And I'm saying that he popularized the use of it. Okay. We have the entire right wing using the term at this point, right? Okay.
Well, but even if he popularized,
you cannot deny the origins of the term, where they come from in the first place.
So what?
The reason why it's important is because when you actually go through an analysis of it, it turns out it's historically revisionist. And it's just not true.
No,
this idea that women were not expected to be self-sacrificial.
Well, okay, let me explain why I'm saying so what.
Medieval period, it's quite obviously bunk.
Let me tell you why I'm saying so what. Paul Wright may have popularized the term. Peter Wright may have popularized the term. I mixed them up with Paul along. May have popularized the term, but what his hypothesis is where it comes from. And he actually is in opposition from the evopsych people who believe that gynocentrism is innate, right?
I know.
He thinks that it is cultural, right? So that there is a schism there. So there's a whole bunch of people who disagree with him on the innate versus cultural matter. Now, none of this is relevant, because what he has brought is where he thinks gynocentrism starts. He doesn't even think it started with Marianism or Mary. He thinks it starts literally in courtly love. Now, all of that, again, is so what? Because gynocentrism itself,
those things are going on at the same time, if you remember.
Gynocentrism itself derives its power not from Peter Wright's idea of where it came from, which many people disagree with, by the way. It derives its power from observable studies and statistics. Okay, that's why people believe it and talk about it.
No, it's not why people believe it.
No, well, they certainly don't, because
most people that listen to this idea that the West is gynocentric, they don't believe it because they've taken in statistics. They believe it because there's something about us as humans, as fallen humans.
Now you're impugning. Now you're saying my enemy is subject to emotional reasoning, therefore they're wrong. You see what I'm talking about? That you want to keep the weapons for yourself, but you want to
disavow keep the weapons for myself.
People are saying that you say what and believe what you believe.
I haven't even got to finish my point. Anyway, listen, you need to go, Alison.
Because they hate women or whatever else. Let's set aside all of that rhetoric and just bring it down to what the studies show. That's why we do that.
Again, I don't agree with you that studies show that men,
I'm going to hold you to that, and we will go through every single one next time
at the same rate as women. That one in particular, that I know that's one that you've used. I've seen that one before, and that one is definitely misrepresented by you for sure, right?
You mean the CDC, the Center of Disease Control? Like the only difference between what I do, which actually, you know what? I shouldn't even have said. Which one are you talking about? Because I do multiple.
Okay. Don't you need to go?
No,
Yeah,
feel free to tell me which domestic violence
Let's-
survey I misrepresent, because I do a whole bunch.
Let's come back to this, Allison. Seriously,
Okay,
it's
all right.
it's been 2.5 hours
for you.
almost. Well,
Yeah.
we'll revisit it. Let's just let
Actually,
all cool.
I want to revisit this whole thing, like gynocentrism and all of the stats and studies that support
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
In literature, it's actually
Right.
called "Women Are Wonderful."
I think
I know.
I think that could be worth taking a look at. I think we at least began the conversation that was the subject. Are women absolved of accountability enough? But not really, but we started that conversation. That's fine. That's fine. Like no one knew where it was gonna go. But I'm gonna like, as the man, as the head, I'm gonna make a call. I'm gonna kingly say we're gonna stop this now. Hear ye, or whatever it is that kings say. And I'm gonna like end it there. But we'll discuss doing this again. I like that I got the space thing to work somewhat, but it really didn't benefit us this time. But we can do this in the future. Maybe we'll stream a Twitter space. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, Allison, are you cool with me ending the show?
Yeah, I'm fine. I gotta go do other stuff, and it's
Yeah,
really freaking
no, it's
cold.
fine.
I gotta
Okay.
arrange to get home.
So I will end the show there. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if not subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on this episode of whatever this is. I think it was just like a Twitter conversation with Natty. I want to thank Natty for coming on and hanging out with us. And we will talk to you guys in the next one. The Emperor Protect.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.